Benedictine, 13th century, right? And so we're going to be talking a little bit about some of that today. So thank you so much for that. So Chamie will be joining us. She was speaking over at the WELCA, the Women of the ELCA conference at Cal Lutheran this weekend, and she was presenting this morning. So she'll be coming in at some stage, but we're going to go on and get started. So maybe we should just introduce ourselves. I'll let you.
I'm Beata, and I'm a spiritual director and a member of Ascension.
Yes.
Long time. Yeah.
Yes. And Amanda Berg, and I'm also a spiritual director, and have had the pleasure of knowing Beata, and so we're excited to be sharing some of this with you today, and Chamie as well. So she'll be joining us, as I mentioned. So we're going to do a couple things today. You notice we're in a circle because a lot of this is as much experiential as it is. Oh, good, we were just sweetheart. Perfect timing.
Amanda, I asked, what is a spiritual director?
Well, that is exactly, we're going to be talking about that. So great question. So what we're going to be doing this morning is we're going to be doing a lot of things. So I ask you just to relax, and we're going to be talking about what spiritual direction is and what it isn't. We'll be talking about a little bit of the history of it because it's actually an ancient practice. We'll be talking about kind of our experiences, things that would be maybe the reasons why we're so passionate about it and why we think it's so important. And also then we're going to be spending some time doing some spiritual practices together. And we'll be having some reflective time too, just time for you to be centered and get a sense of maybe what it's like to have a little bit of that being still time, which we all need. And that's really at the heart of a lot of our spirituality is being still and having time of solitude and quiet and listening to God. It's really about a lot of listening. So anyway, so that's so I invite you into a sort of a spirit of openness as we begin. And let's see here. Chamie, did you want to say anything? We were just introducing ourselves, and so everyone I think knows who you are, but if you want to just do that too, maybe. So.
Hi. I just came from CLU, such a gathering of women for the ELCA, and I actually was talking a little bit with them this morning too about spiritual direction, and I'm just really excited to see you all here to be able to work with Beata and Amanda, because we'll share a little bit later how this has been a really super important part of our journey, and we want to invite you into it too, so into your own experience with it. So we can split it, and then we're all in different ways.
That was the plan, yeah. So I think what we're going to do to begin, so we are going to have a little time in quiet here in a minute, but before we begin that, just as a way of kind of getting us warmed up to this idea, so much of our lives are spent in our head space, and part of spiritual direction is really moving us into our heart space. And one of the ways we do that, and I'll explain this more after, but I just want you to your neighbor, just don't stress about this, just the first thing that comes to your mind, I'd like you to share with them in just a minute or so how your morning went in a metaphor. So maybe you're going to say, it was like a marathon today, getting here, because I had to do this even before, I got here. Or, whatever it may be. There's no right or wrong. But tell your story in a metaphor. Think of a metaphor to describe your morning. Take a minute to just think about that. And then I want you to turn to your neighbor and share your metaphor of your morning. All right? So just take a few minutes. And then we'll take turns. And I see the look of concern on people's faces, but it's okay. This is. We'll all explain why this is the case. It can be difficult. Think about it.
Swimming through blue. Oh dear.
Yeah.
This morning was like running the highlights. There were things that needed to go on, but everything.
More hopscotch mornings.
Really, that's the things that happened.
Thanks, girl.
So why
I don't know. It's like kind of one of those things. You keep pulling along until you get yourself out. Get it done, but it's for some reason always slogging along. I'm here. Spring early.
Spring early morning? No, I'm a night owl, so I have to make it for the day and relax. So I can't do when I get up in the morning early. I'm very happy. By the time you come, you have to so much. If I sleep in, I'm going to go to fire.
Either way, remember what Congress said that two parts of the day it's getting up and going to bed. I want to get out of bed,
Okay,
but I
so
don't want to go
we'll just circle back now. And I'm curious how this went for you. Now, we don't have time to have everyone share their metaphors or whatnot, but I'm curious, for how many of you was this a bit difficult? Okay, some of you, yeah, it's kind of difficult, right? And there's a reason for that, because we don't tend to think in metaphor. We're Western thinkers. We tend to be very concrete, and yet when we start thinking in metaphors, when we start talking in metaphors, it goes into this heart space. And if you think of the language of poets, and you think of poetry, and you think of music that stirs us and moves us, it comes from the land of metaphor. It comes from this place of the heart. It's not that these two are disconnected. They're not. We need both. I think that was even one of our hymns this morning. Talked about the mind and the heart. I think it was in Blessed Be the Tide That Binds. But there's something about intentionally dwelling in this heart space. And that is really a lot what our spiritual life is about. It's tending to that heart space. And so we're going to dig deeper into what spiritual direction is, but I want to just give a bit of a framework before we begin. So if we look at the overarching narrative in our Christian story, it's a story of God coming to us through Christ, and then through the Spirit, this idea that the Spirit who is within us and dwells among us is calling us to be a part of what's called the Missio Dei, God's mission in the world. And we're called to be faithful to that mission. And what is that mission as we come to understand it through Scripture, through what Christ taught us, through Christ's example? And at its very basic level, it's love, is it not? We have a message of love to share. And we could spend lots of time talking about what is God's Missio Dei, and certainly it's gotten the church in a lot of trouble too. Lots of different interpretations of what that is. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do this morning is help you see that as a part of the Missio Dei, as a part of the Christian family, we do several things. We gather to worship. And many of us were in worship already this morning, and some of us may be going later. That's one of the things we do as a part of an expression of this faith. And then what else do? We serve. We gather, we're called together, we're fed, we gather around the Eucharist, we're baptized into the faith, and then we go. We're sent. We're sent out in the world, right, to spread this through the things that we do. Yesterday was the Lutheran Social Services walk to raise money. So we gather, we serve. These are all parts of the Missio Dei as we understand it. But there's another important piece to this, and it's the tending and minding of our souls. It's the spirituality piece. It's the piece that's in here. It's the piece that as much as we might say the Lord's Prayer together, and there's richness in that, and we know Christ taught us that, are we living a prayerful life? Do we have a life of prayer? These are the spirituality pieces, because this type of life is what informs how we serve. It informs everything we do. Social justice is a wonderful thing that we're called to be a part of when we know that there are people who are marginalized and need help. That's a part of our call. But if our hearts are not right with God, we may not be the best messengers of what we're trying to do. Now, we're going to always fail because we're human. And this side of the veil will never reach perfection. But we need accompaniment. We need people in our path to help us as we go about tending and minding to these souls, as we go and live out this Missio Day. So that's sort of the context, hopefully, that helps you understand what this is about. Because I think sometimes we think, well, I go to church and I have devotions, and those are great. But there's such a richness there of what could be such a deep well that you could be exploring even more in our faith journeys. And if you've ever found yourself maybe reading scripture or having prayer time, and it goes on longer than you realize because there was just so much there, it's a beautiful space to be in. That's a taste of what we're talking about today, the dwelling, the spending time with God. So in a real quick sense, and we're going to unpack this a lot deeper, but you'll notice at the top on your white sheet, spiritual direction, and there's a couple words under it, because one of the problematic things of spiritual direction is the name direction. It seems to infer that somehow, and even the term being called a spiritual director is actually, I don't know why they keep perpetuating this name, because no one likes it, because it seems to infer that we are somehow directing, that there's somehow, that's not what it is. So I offer 3 other alternatives below: spiritual companion, a companion on your journey; spiritual accompaniment, someone walking alongside you; a soul friend, and we'll talk more about that. So one of the quotes, and I can't remember who said it, but one of my favorite definitions is spiritual direction is like 2 beggars on the road, one pointing the other where good food can be found. In other words, we're on this journey together. There's no hierarchy there, but it really centers around listening and being a person who can listen. And we're going to talk more about that. But now I'm going to invite you, before we go further, is we're going to take just a minute to kind of center ourselves and just be at peace a moment with this. And so Beata's going to open us in prayer, and then we're going to listen to a song. And I just invite you to don't do anything. Just rest in this moment. You can look at the candles or just use it as close your eyes, whatever's comfortable for you. And then to not sort of break the spirit of the moment, of the stillness, right after the song is over, if you look on your gold sheet, we're going to, as a group, go through the prayer of openness. And I will start it, that little section that says Spirit of Freedom. And then we're going to go around. So I'll start, then you would take the next one, Kathy, God of Spaciousness. And we'll just go around. And if you prefer not to read, just tap the person's shoulder next to you. It's totally fine. I don't want anyone to feel on the spot, okay? There are, just to say, there are some typos on this. It was a PDF and I couldn't change them. So it's not Faithful Fried. It is Faithful Friend. I could have marked it out when I made copies. I didn't think of that. But anyway, so I invite you just into this moment of stillness. This will probably be about 7 minutes or so of just a little still time. And I invite you to enjoy it.
Dear God, speak gently in my silence. When the loud inner voices of my fears keep pulling me away from you, help me to trust that you are still there, even when I am unable to hear you. Give me ears to listen to your small voice saying, "Come to me, you who are unburdened, overburdened, and I will give you rest. For I am gentle and humble of heart." Let the loving voice be my guide. Amen.